Hey everybody, Zach here from Now You Know, and we're really lucky today to have with us Javier Cavada. He is the CEO and president of a company called Highview Power, and I'm speaking to him in London. My first question is, we reported on you guys a few weeks ago on Tesla Time News, and you're storing energy, but you're not using lithium. So am I crazy? Are you storing energy out of thin air?
Definitively. We are taking, we are a purely renewable energy storage technology company. But there is another one technology that is the hydro, the pump hydro using water. Water, sun, wind. Well, what is missing? Air. But as an engineer, we simply liquefy the air. That is what we do every time that we get oxygen in a hospital, or we get nitrogen in a factory. It's liquefied. It's just cooled down until it can get into a bottle, a tank, and be transported. So very well-known technology in that sense.
Okay, so you're storing this in what you guys are calling the CRYOBattery. And basically, like you said, you're liquefying the air around us. And so explain that to our viewers. So what's the advantage of liquefying air? It sounds like a lot of work.
Absolutely. No, I tell you that we have been doing as society. In the US, in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, everywhere. It's liquefaction of air is a very well-known process. When we are, air is made up of nitrogen, oxygen, and argon. So three main components. And when you need nitrogen or oxygen for industrial or sanitary reasons, you need to liquefy air. So at least before I was born, it was already a normal process in the industry. So it's what we have been doing in Highview is to take that technology to store energy with one intention, is how to get pump hydro or hydro plant capabilities without limitation. Limitation of where do I find the water, where do I find the valley, where do I find the height, where do I find a place that they don't care to be moved out and put the water there, and also how to make it industrial, modular, and a little bit like Tesla or lithium-ion battery system, modular, replicable, locatable. But let's say our market is the larger scale, really larger scale. That's why for us batteries are a big alliance for us. So we go in, quoting some of our customers, we do pump hydro in a box. We can take our box with us, put it there, and not bothering the people who lives next to it.
That's a really interesting point because, we all love pumped hydro. It's clean, but you're right. It has to be in either a perfect situation or you have to make that situation. And if you make that situation with like a dam, then you are making a huge environmental cost.
Absolutely. And there is, on top of that, I think it's difficult to find somebody who doesn't like the pump hydro or the hydro plants that exist already. But also the same is really tough to find somebody who wants a new one, especially nearby, because it's minimum. It will take around 10 years to develop in really developed industry countries like US, Europe again, and can take decades in other places. So, our system is, again, purely industrial, and we take components, processes that are running as we speak. They are running in hundreds of locations across the US, already running these kind of systems, but with a difference, not utilized to store energy, just to liquefy air, and they don't gasify it again to run a turbine and a generator, which is what we do. They do it really to store and transport those gases, which is pretty cool, I can say.
Interesting. So I was going to ask you, why haven't I heard of this before? But you're right, I have heard of it. I just haven't heard of it in the way that you're using it. So I guess that's my next question is why has no one done this before? I've been reporting on this industry for years, and you're the first I've heard that's using it to actually store.
Absolutely. I tell you, Highview Power was born in early 2000, in 2005, so it's in a teenager state, and we have been patenting. We have a very strong intellectual property on the processes to be used in these components and these parts of equipment, very standard equipment, but for this specific storage application. And I tell you, I'm more than 20 years in the industry, so of course I'm cleaning up my CV from fossil fuel to cleaner fossil fuel to renewables and now energy storage. Really, if you tell me 5 years ago, do we need this larger scale, long duration energy storage? I will tell you clear no. So there will not be any need 5 years ago because there was not enough wind and solar in the grid, creating intermittency and balancing. So when the wind and solar are going over 20%, well, you start to need a lot of Tesla and lithium-ion, a lot of energy storage, a lot of pumped hydro. And when you go over 30%, well, your grid is messed up. I mean, we see that in places like here in London but we see it in many places where thermal is super stable, but it's super dirty, it's super unsustainable, and we can see this after 3 months being at home that the sky looks really blue, even in downtown London. The reason is that this large, bulky energy storage was not required if we would not run a renewable grid. That's the concise reason.
Interesting. So, I mean, you've been in this industry for a long time, and it's only been fairly recently that even you, who are in a company doing this, has realized that this is a necessary thing. So that kind of explains why because we ask on the show all the time, like, why is no one getting this? But you're saying basically it's happened very fast.
Absolutely. I tell you that if you look at you would be a freak, like I can be looking at the library, at the books of liquefaction of air for the energy storage applications, you can find books in the late 20th century. I mean, people thinking about that, and the company took that from the university, working with some PhD people from many places, and found technology meeting the market demand, because indeed before the technology was there in the books, was ready in the industrial portfolio of big companies, we can talk about General Electric, ABB, Siemens. They make all components that are fundamental for this technology. But do they need energy storage? I mean, if you run a combined cycle gas turbine, you don't need energy storage. Or if you run a gas picker, I mean, that's why, our competition, who is competing with what we bring to the market is the fossil fuel. It's the status quo of the previous 20, 30 years. If we continue burning stuff to produce electricity, you don't need energy storage, but damn, we better stop burning stuff.
So how long can you store energy for?
You can store, technically you can store it from seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, so many months. We are all very familiar. We use gas in our houses for heating and for decades, and you see all these gas terminals, so LNG terminals in the big harbors. Those big tanks, really bulky, giant tanks, they are exactly the same technology we use to store the air liquefied. So liquefied natural gas, an LNG, let's say compound or building or infrastructure is identical to what we need to store the liquid air. So you can, of course, you will be storing and dispatching back to the grid electricity, we expect, mostly every day, but sometimes every week, and even sometimes every month, because you are just a kind of safety guarantee of dispatch of electricity or of energy. So in that sense, you are guaranteeing it's not eternal, like anything is eternal. That means something like 3 months, you can store it safely. And if you don't use your storage for 3 months, there's something wrong with the place where why did you build it? So
interesting. Right. So basically, we just need to store it for usually hours because we're just waiting for peaks and troughs in the energy curve.
Absolutely. And of course, there are days that you have one very stormy week, and then maybe you need several days. But I tell you, the projects that we are having in the market, the normal size is from 8 hours to 12 hours. It's a very common profile for a very solar place or a very windy place. 8 to 12 hours of storage, really bulky and reliable. When it's so reliable, probably you will not touch 365 days per year during 100 years, but maybe 98% of the days. If you have a cosmic interference, you have a very, for instance, a volcano ashes event like happened a couple of 10 years ago, something like that. You don't get solar power dispatch, and you need to, but that's not common. That's not common.
So to make a bigger battery from a CRYOBattery, I just need a bigger tank.
Definitely. That's the key. That's the key, and that's why we see. I've been in the Tesla factory making the energy storage batteries several years ago. Being in an EPC, building energy storage plants with lithium-ion. So lithium-ion and CRYOBattery are very complementary in that sense. Lithium-ion, the most expensive part is the battery cell, where is all the chemistry and the magic, you would say, happening. In our case, the magic and the most expensive part is in the liquefaction and the discharge. So the battery cell is a tank, it's a steel tank. a stainless steel tank, which, as you can imagine, is the least exotic thing and the most available stuff you can find. You use the same skills, the same supply chain, no rare earths, no rare chemicals or materials or recycling challenges, and you can just double the storage by just doubling the tanks, and you can double them in diameter, in height, both of them, adding more tanks. So it's extremely modular and well, purely green, purely clean in that sense.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So basically, all you need to do to pump the air into the tank is use some electricity, and that electricity can be renewable, like solar or wind.
Exactly. I mean, the only inputs here is electricity and air. So, which, I mean, air, as we all know, is available anywhere that there are human beings, and electricity can be from the grid, can be from a solar farm, can be from wind farm, or can be from a mix. So, in that sense, it's agnostic, like any energy storage asset. You get the electricity from wherever. Normally, you will get it from the excess of wind or the excess of solar. I mean, it would not make too much sense to have a combustion system to fill an energy storage asset.
And then it's zero emissions.
Exactly. And when that's a cool thing that I would like to highlight. When you are cooling down the air, and as I said, it's a extremely standard process. You are just reducing the temperature, and then you go from gas to the point of liquefaction. But in the meantime, there are some components of the air that we are breathing that don't get into liquid, but get into solid, like CO2, if there is some pollution in the air, or the water. So we are extracting water. So the air, we are drying it out, and we are taking the CO2 out. So you can really capture the carbon that you have in the air in a place, just to say a place like LA that I was just before the lockdown, and it was a bit dusty atmosphere, smoggy, yeah, it's a better word. It was a bit smoggy. You would just deliver electricity and air, but the air you deliver back to the atmosphere is cleaner. I mean, it's as cleaner as you wind. So you can store the CO2 and sell it for industrial applications, but normally the CO2 percentage in the air is not very big.
I didn't even think about that. Right, you're able to take out the different components because they freeze at different temperatures. So you can actually sell the CO2 for industrial or medical uses.
And I can tell you that in UK applications, that's something very typical here. I'm sure that they will use the CO2 for the brewery, for the kind of, I would call food chain, but it's more for beer, I could say.
So you could have little breweries at each of your power stations. I mean, that would be pretty cool. Highview beer.
Liquid air energy storage beer, kind of. But I mean, it's like any CO2 you buy, you need to pay for the CO2. And again, the CO2, you get it from the same process. You liquefy air, and it's one of the byproducts, the same as water. You get very dry water out. But another option is also to make it gasify it back and send it to the atmosphere. But normally it's a good collateral advantage or benefit that you can add.
Right. I mean, so you could actually be carbon negative if you want to be.
Absolutely. No, you will be. I mean, you will be. It's because you will be. But I said no water needed, no emissions. I mean, as you can imagine, I mean, where you can see some smoke from the plant, but it's not a smoke. It's colder air. It's a bit of colder air. It's just vapor, or vaping. It's common, quite fashionable name now.
Okay, so I hear our viewers watching right now at home, and they're going, "Okay, Zach, this sounds too good to be true." I mean, you just told us that it's no emissions, it's all renewable energy to make. You can build these anywhere you want. So there must be one piece of the equation. These must be super expensive to build.
And I love this question because it's exactly the lowest cost of storage today. But with one condition, which is a crucial condition, is that the application needs to be large enough. So, I mean, the same that other technologies, they get better the smaller they are. I mean, we get better the bigger we are. So for that reason, you have seen this one that we are in the construction process now in Manchester, in the northern part of England. Is going to be double of the one from Tesla in Hornsdale in the South Australia. But for us, that's quite normal. You would say the sweet spot, but the sweet spot for us is starting there onwards. So I mean, the bigger the better in a way, because we use equipment that is purely industrial. So, and the industry has been doing oil and gas all the last 30, 40 years, and they have bulky equipment. So that if you can technically make it small, and then you would be fully right, would be too expensive. That's why for the smaller we say no. Let's put lithium ion. Let's put electrochemical. Let's for the smaller applications up to 1 hour, 2 hours. For us, you can imagine the charging station. The discharging station is going to be the same if you want 1 hour, that if you want 2 hours, that if you want 10 hours. So then, and they are the most expensive part. So the more hours you have is quite clear. So starting by 4 hours, we're already unbeatable in cost. We're the lowest cost, but of course it's much better with 6 hours and way better with 8 hours, and that's the real reason. And to that great question of why don't we have 1,000 or 1 million plants already built, we discussed it before. There was no need, and it's quite sad. Or the market was considering there was no need, because unless you force the fossil fuel to stop in a way or to be replaced quickly, the status quo remains being the status quo. So when I said that the competition is the fossil fuel, I would say a better way to put it is the competition is to continue doing the things as we did it in the 90s and the early 2000s. So that's not acceptable.
Wow, this is super exciting because there's no argument to it that I can see. Basically, you're building a battery that's bigger than the Hornsdale battery in South Australia that all of our viewers know about, and it's cheaper than, on your website, and is this true? You say that basically you can be about half the cost of lithium.
It is, but again, there is a very clear, I know your viewers are very smart guys and girls. I'm one of them, as you know. So, but when, it's pure arithmetics. If a lithium ion is able to make 1 hour, you want 2 hours, you need to double the cost. If you want to make 20 hours, you need to multiply by 10 the cost. In our case, adding hours is marginal cost. So if it's a long duration, we call it long duration because it's more than 4 hours, but I would not call it long. It's just more than 4 hours. Long duration would be weeks or months, but this is just 4, 5, 10 hours, half a day, 1 day. That's then it's not only half of a lithium ion. It's much less than half. But it's just pure economies of scale. So if as a mechanical engineer, I need to say this. Just a turbine, a steam turbine of 50 megawatts, if you double it to 100 megawatts, the cost is not double. It's around 40% more. And this is, everybody can see it in the catalog from the main manufacturers, and those economies of scale are getting bigger and bigger. The bigger is the megawatts, the bigger is the megawatt hour, and the bigger are proportionally the diameters and the heights of the equipment. So that's why we talk about closing the circle in a way.
This is so exciting for me on this channel because one of the biggest arguments we hear all the time about how I can't be right about battery storage for renewables is they say there's not enough lithium or batteries in the world. We're going to be using them for cars. There's no way, Zach, you're going to have your batteries that you want. And so you're basically telling me as long as we got air, we can do it.
Absolutely. You go for the first hours, for the small, very decentralized applications, households, etc. You go with this very nice, I should not make advertisement here, but these battery walls or Tesla battery walls, they look gorgeous. And then you have a bulky kind of gas station, but instead of being a gas station, it's a tank with liquid air that you blow a steam turbine, a generator, and you get, I didn't mention that, but on top of doing energy storage application, this system also provides a lot of rotating inertia services to the grid that that those are being given by nuclear, by coal, by gas, by diesel. So everything that has a rotating equipment is balancing the grid. And well, one of the arguments I'm sure they have told you is that the batteries cannot give inertia. They just give a kind of thing called synthetic inertia that is like a bad copy. But if you put a large scale energy storage with rotating equipment like ours, and things like pump hydro can do the same, you solve the equation. So you don't need only one technology. You need all the available energy storage technologies, but don't let them tell you that we need to continue burning stuff. That's like the Stone Age.
That's awesome to hear. Wow. It's so exciting to hear that there's a company like yours that's starting up that is doing this in a completely different way. And yet, like you said, it's a proven technology. It's not some crazy thing that we have to prove works.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, if something we don't have in our team, in our companies, that we don't have those crazy inventors or native professors, where there's industry people who have been doing this for decades, gigawatts in the back, in the shoulders of install, of course, in a lot of renewables, but a lot of fossil fuels also. And well, the company has built already 2 plants that have been running for several years, and now we are building the largest in the world. Stay tuned, because I expect to come with the largest in the world again pretty soon.
Really? So I hear that you're coming over here across the pond to Vermont. Is that true?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we have a large project in Vermont that is bigger than the one in the UK, and provided that borders are open and I can take a flight, but not me. I mean, we have a big team in the US already. We have a great office in Alexandria, in Virginia, and we have an office in San Francisco, in California. So we see the US as the market in terms of demand today, and size, and need. And well, it's the customers, the utilities, the IPPs, the municipal energy companies. So it's overwhelming, I tell you, but it's great, because that's why we're in the business of partnering with people. We partner with good chaps like Tenaska Power Services, to be our ally there in ERCOT, in the Texas area, to be able to deliver as many as we can. Because I mean, if we rely only on one company, it's going to be too slow to what we need. So that's why we need to create a club, a bit like Tesla has been doing. I mean, on top of buying the cars, we want the battery on the wall, and we want the cap and the jumper. So that's what we are doing here. I mean, we for the good for everyone. I mean, it's cleaner, smart, and it's available and proven. You look at 2019. I mean, last year. I mean, we were talking about a couple of gigawatts of new energy storage projects globally in lithium ion. But I mean, you are talking about 1 hour, 1 point something of duration. And that's, I mean, it's clearly that the business is in that frame of time. And well, we cover all what goes over 4 hours, 5, 10, 12, 20. So and that's why, I mean, this is not a game of one technology in town. This is as many as we can. So, but the thing is that in larger scale, there are only 3 technologies which are deployable today. One is pump hydro, as we discussed. The other one is compressor, that does pretty much the same as we would do, but it has the need of underground cavern, a place underground to have it tightly. So technically it's totally feasible. It's a bit of quite costly to find a cavern that fits that demand, and then the CRYOBattery, which is in a way the learnings of the other 2 to make it industrial and make it modular. So that's why we're a bit of the brother or the sister of the other 2, in a way purely modular. So. And in short duration, I mean, let's get all the lithium ion we can into the ground, because there is plenty of need of this fast speed and fast response frequency regulation assets everywhere. So the more wind and more solar we deploy.
And then finally, because I want to let you go so you can go build some more cryo batteries for us. My last question here is, how has the conversation changed with people in the industry? I'm sure you're talking to people, friends who work in the industry. Is it still hard to convince them that this is something, or are they getting it now?
I mean, that's a wonderful one. I mean, I've been in these industries long enough. I wouldn't say so long, because I enjoy like a little kid, and we have a bit of one, like all the industries. I mean, this is like a small village, so we are always the same people moving, sometimes from company or from technology, but we all know what others are doing, and I can say that in the last year and a half, we see a drastic, almost dramatic change, and the change is that, and that's why I said about the competition, who is the competitor. The big change is that customers, the big players, are not able to build new gas plants, and they are not able to continue running the coal plants. And if they could run the coal plants and they could still build gas-fired power plants, they would say, this looks great, but I mean, there is such an industry in the fossil fuels that is, they have such an inertia that And we are not here to stop them. We're just here to surround them and do the right stuff and let them fall down the cliff. But that's...
Well, this is super exciting. I hope that when your Vermont plant gets to a certain point, Jesse and I can come visit, because that sounds really exciting. I want to show people firsthand what you guys are doing.
Will be fantastic. I can tell you that Vermont in winter will be a big advantage. We will need so much temperature drop down to liquefy there, but that's a joke. I mean, there's no big influence. But let's meet in spring or summer if possible.